updates to the Chart of Accounts 23/24 and gives appropriate actions for trusts. This is aimed at trusts primarily that are already using the Chart of Accounts or in the process of adoption. So just to start off, be a bit more interactive and to help us understand you more, we've got a couple of questions for you. So they'll appear in boxes on the screen. So the first question is how many financial management systems you use in your general ledger, excluding budgeting specific systems. So a box should just appear on your screen saying 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. Thank you so much for everyone that's responding to that so far. At the moment, everyone's on 1, so 100% on that, which is good to see. Occasionally we do see trust with many more than that. But thank you so much for everyone that's answered so far. And then the next question will be a word cloud. It can be a bit funny sometimes, so try and avoid using spaces. If not, put your answer in the chat. If you've received a quote for a financial management system to enable the chart of accounts and automation, how much is it? And again, that should just appear in a box on your screen. And if you haven't received a quote, that's absolutely fine. And it seems that so far no one's put anything in the chat, so that's absolutely fine if you haven't received a quote. And I'll hand over to Nikki Summers, who will start going through the updates.
Thanks very much, Paul. So just to give you a summary of the updates in the chart of accounts for 23/24, we have added 49 new account codes. That's a lot more than we'd normally add. We try and keep it to a minimum, but to improve financial reporting, it's been absolutely necessary to include those. We've deleted one account code. There's several updates to mapping, and there's a few updated descriptions. So we'll be covering all of those in a few slides' time. So places you can find out about the updates. So there's on the actual chart of accounts spreadsheet itself, which you can find on gov.uk. There's a change control tab, which will list all the changes itself. And then also on the COA structures and mappings tab, the cells that are highlighted as yellow are also where we've made amendments. You can also find updates on the guide to adopting the Academies chart of accounts. They're all listed there along with the actions for trusts, and it's broadly what we're going to go through today. So there will be other changes. Obviously, we won't make any changes to the 23/24 version in terms of account codes. So the account codes that have been added and deleted, they will stay as they are. No changes there. But we do make changes to the mapping because obviously the chart of accounts is forward-looking and the accounts return is retrospective. So we don't know what data at the moment they'll be wanting to collect for 23/24. So at that point in time, this time next year, we will have to make some mapping updates and communicate those, but no changes to account codes. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about our criteria for adding new account codes. Firstly, if it's a financial reporting requirement, that is obviously a standalone consideration, and we have to implement new account codes. Also, if there's a new field in the accounts return form and it's ongoing, then we'd also add a new account code. So other considerations, we often consider these in tandem with other ones. So if it's a time span over 5 years, we would consider that, but it would also be alongside, whether it's a ministerial request and then there was an ongoing need. Materiality. So, for example, if we thought we would need to report it in the consolidated accounts in the SARA, then we would obviously put a new account code in. But actually, if it's something that was going to be material in the context of financial reporting to trustees, etc., then we would also add an account code. If it is quite common across the sector, if there's quite high usage of a certain area of income or expenditure, then we definitely look to add that. So last year, for example, we added income codes for nursery and wraparound services. So obviously that's going to apply to the majority of primary schools. So it's definitely one to add. And also if we get a large number of sector requests, I think one we had a lot of is where to allocate attendance officer or education welfare officer costs too. So we've added that one this year. But I'd say the majority of our updates are from sector feedback where we've had queries from trusts. So and they might have spotted something that we haven't picked up. Where we've made updates on the balance sheet this year, that was certainly a result of trusts picking up that we hadn't got a granular enough detail in order to for trusts to complete their financial statements. So moving on then. So the first area we'll look at is the new account codes under the balance sheet. So of the 49 new account codes, 28 of them are actually for the loans and provisions. So previously we have, well, in the 22-23 version of the COA, we just have codes for loans and provisions. But obviously that was set up for the accounts return, which doesn't require a breakdown, but obviously your financial statements require a breakdown of less than 1 year and more than 1 year. So we've repurposed the existing account codes for less than 1 year, but we've added new account codes for loans and provisions greater than 1 year. So what trust would need to do is just, if you analyse any loans that you've got, and if you've got any that are greater than 1 year, you would need to move them to the new account codes. So looking at new account codes for income. So we've got 5 new account codes here, but we've basically set these up to future-proof the COA for any temporary reporting requirements. Because we can't change this chart of accounts once it's set for that year. So if we've got any unknown new grants that come out the woodwork that we need to report in our consolidated accounts. So for example, we had the COVID funding, clearly we weren't expecting that. It was very short term, but we couldn't, the chart of accounts couldn't be flexed to incorporate new account codes. So it's obviously made it sort of a little bit tricky for trusts in that we're having to ask them to code that funding to other grants and then manually adjust it for the purpose of the accounts return, which we know isn't ideal. So we've put these here to future-proof it. So they're ones that will just sit there dormant until we can provide, until we need those. Hopefully we won't, but they're there. So we have also added some new codes in the staff cost area. So firstly, there's teaching overtime. So that is just to make leadership teaching overtime, which just brings that category into line with the other ones. I'm not sure why there wasn't an overtime included in there. I mean, it's probably quite a rarity, but it'll still be something that's happened from time to time. We've also added a new staff category for teaching, for leadership non-teaching. So again, similarly to the loans and provisions, we've repurposed the existing leadership code to a leadership teaching set of account codes, and then we've added a new rate for non-teaching. So this was based on sector feedback that there was nowhere, we'd only kind of got an area of, even though it's called leadership on the accounts return, they all mapped through to teaching. So effectively, there wasn't anywhere to put leadership non-teaching. Um, the non-teaching will still link through to the benchmarking, admin and finance, but that's a separate issue. We don't have, unfortunately, a breakdown of leadership in the benchmarking at the moment, but it's certainly something that I'll be feeding back that that trust would like more detail on. We've also added a pensions account code for cash contributions to pension deficit. So there is a pensions adjustments code in there at the moment, but that is for non-cash movements. So for your notional charges to the I&E. Previously, I think probably trust may have been using that code, but actually it doesn't map to the correct place in the accounts return. So in order to ensure that this value goes to the correct place, we've added this new account code. So moving on to supplies and services, we've had to add a whole bunch of agency support staff account codes. So previously, the single agency support staff account code, balances on that wouldn't feed through to the right place on the benchmarking. So benchmarking has got different guidance to the SOFA, in that the agency support staff have to be allocated to the area of expenditure rather than a generic agency support staff cost area. So we've had to set up an account code for each of those areas. So as you can see, any agency support staff you've got for grounds maintenance, you would now put to 845270, as opposed to, I think previously it was 845250. So other updates we've made to supplies and services, we've added an education welfare and attendance services account code, as we've had a lot of queries from trusts that there wasn't actually anything existing for that, and also there was nothing similar either where we could advise trusts allocate it to and add their own local account code. There's also another non-educational contracts category now, because within our non-educational contracts there was no sort of catch-all for anything that wasn't specific, so that might be helpful. And also we've now added a account code for welfare payments to pupils and students, which seems to be an emerging issue. I think obviously going through tough times at the moment, and I think it seems that trusts are having to make more and more of those welfare payments in various guises. And I think that's probably something that will be more scrutinised as we move forward as well. Another query that we've come up with from trusts where there is nowhere suitable to allocate funds to, is donations to charity. So again, we've set up another new account code for that. So hopefully, we only really set up new account codes if there is nowhere else suitable for it to sit. Sometimes it's often that we can manage any sort of slight differences within other codes by saying we just set up a different your own local account code underneath one of the DFE ones. But if there isn't anything that's similar that maps to the correct places in the accounts return and the BFR, then we would definitely look to set up a new account code. So just some general notes around actions on new account codes. So only kind of make these amendments for the financial year 23-24. The COA 22-23 still works alongside the 22-23 financial year. Again, we will update the mapping so that it does feed through to the correct places on the accounts return. We do have a new field on the accounts return this year to split out the 16 to 19 funding, which we have luckily got a chart of accounts code already set up for, but it just doesn't map at the moment to the correct place on the AR. So now we've got a new field, we can actually map it directly into that field. FMS suppliers have been told about these updates, so they, I think, are already working on adding them to their databases. They may have contacted you. Each FMS supplier will manage it in slightly different ways, but we are actually going to be having if they haven't told you already, we are going to be communicating out to them again the next couple of days. So hopefully you'll hear from them soon if you haven't done already. So obviously, yeah, for all those codes, we just suggest that you use the current usage of kind of those areas of expenditure, and maybe that you need to kind of reallocate the budgets at this moment to those new account codes, as well as obviously as the actuals for 23-24. So we just have one deleted account code this year, and that is sort of the opposite entry of the opposite effect of setting up all those new agency support staff codes, which are specific to service areas. So we're basically just getting rid of this generic one now. So obviously it's to stop using this one, but use the other 6. Again, very similar action to new account codes, that it's effective from 23-24. You don't need to worry about changing anything for 22-23. Just to note as well that we also will not be reusing any account codes that are deleted, because obviously you will have those legacy amounts sitting in your system, so we won't want to do anything to confuse that in future years. So I mean, hopefully we will never need to use those at all, but it wouldn't be for a minimum of 5 years. So there are a lot of mapping changes. I think there are actually 63 now. We have released a new version of the COA on Wednesday because a couple of BFR issues mapping issues to the BFR were spotted. So we have updated that. We haven't changed any of the new or deleted account codes. It's just just some BFR mapping. But yeah, the majority of these are around historic BFR mapping codes that have kind of been sitting there. So it's just that we've refined that. So if you are looking at your BFR mapping now, make sure when you're completing your BFR, if you just look at the latest version that was released on Wednesday. There's a couple of others. So we've changed the mapping for pensions fair value on the accounts return. That was actually mapping in. There's two account codes that were being mapped into disabled fields last year. So obviously that caused a couple of problems. But yeah, that's now been sorted. And because of a change in the guidance on admin ICT as well, there's also been an amendment. And again, also for legal conversions. So we've already got we already had an account code set up for legal conversions, but as there was a new AR field last year for that. It's now been updated. So nothing really too much to worry about there. It's just noting what they are. And then there are some mapping changes. Again, just to highlight what those mapping changes mean. So no action really for trusts, just to be aware of that. But then we will produce a hybrid version of the 23-24 next year when we know what the changes are for the AR. So it's just something to note when you're completing your accounts return, that you kind of know where your income and expenditure is being mapped to. And then there are some very minor descriptions changes. Mainly the ones to note are the L2 descriptions, where we've repurposed some of the account codes on the it's just on the loans, the provisions, and leadership. To say the leadership now is now repurposed into leadership teaching, and that's because we know that probably the majority of the costs are sitting in teaching, so we've left them there. So it's just if you wanted to move some onto the leadership non-teaching, hopefully that's kind of slightly less onerous. We have in the first two sessions, we had quite a lot of questions around what goes into non-leadership. Sorry, leadership non-teaching. So I will be producing some guidance on that. Obviously, we're not going to be completely prescriptive about that, but just sort of giving an idea around what that should be. So I hope to get that out and add that to the guide, to the adopting chart of accounts, and also to the account code guidance as well. So just some final points then to make. There are still some requests or requirements to put through some manual reallocations in your AR 22-23. Obviously, trusts are still receiving COVID funding, and we don't have the account codes to code income directly to COVID funding. So that manual reallocation will still need to happen from other grants to the COVID fields. And also, again, the funds table as well. So we did kind of put it out for a bit of consultation to some trusts in March prior to the release of the 23-24, but it was felt that it's still something that is much too complicated in terms of trusts having to action the journals, which could then automate directly into the AR. So I think it's felt that at the moment it's best to leave it as it is. And what we'd like to do is work closer with auditors, really, to find a way that would best make the best use of automation on that area, but actually with minimal effort, or in an easiest possible way for trust to actually manage. And just to note, if you're wanting to automate for 22-23, we hope you are. Start your conversations with your auditors early, because obviously they have certain systems in place, obviously timetables as well. If they want to have a conversation with us as well, if you wanted a three-way conversation, absolutely really happy to do that. Contact us on our chart of accounts email address that you'll see in a little while. And also, actually, if what we're in the process of doing is looking to provide a framework for FMS providers. We're looking for volunteers who we could use for in a user research campaign to with about what are you looking for, what would you like to see in a framework if you were looking to procure a new FMS system. So we've got a framework in mind. We're going to employer user research to actually also to then actually, once we've got something a little bit more stable, to come out to trusts and ask them if they think that this is applicable, and find out what they would really want to know. So if you've got any, if anybody is kind of willing to volunteer, it won't be for 2 or 3 months, probably 3 months. Then please, if you leave your name in the chat along with just say that you're interested in or you're happy to be a volunteer to take part in that user research. I mean, it's usually, from my experience, it's about an hour of your time. It's an interview, and that's as far as it goes. You're not asked to provide any further information, but we are looking for about 20, sort of 15 to 20 trusts, really. So that's it from me. Thanks very much for your time, and I'll pass back to Paul.
Thank you very much, Nikki. So based on what Nikki's just been saying about automating, I've got one more question for you. Are you considering using automation for the accounts return 22-23? Again, a box should just appear on your screen, and we're really grateful for all of your responses, since it helps us gauge all sorts of things, particularly around service capacity that we need to put in place. So thank you very much for all of your responses. So we're now coming towards the end of the presentation. And if we move on to the next slide, Nikki. So you'll see here that there are a number of ways of getting in contact with us. So if you want to use the ESFA inquiry service, please quote the Academy's chart of accounts. It just gets things through to us a bit faster, so it can take a couple of days for things to be triaged. Or you can use the academies.coa@education.gov.uk inbox, and that way things come straight to us. Or if you're part of the FD forum, we monitor the Academy's chart of accounts area there. And we find that a very useful way for trusts to get in contact with us, and often we find that trusts answer each other's questions on there. And we are running further sessions. We're aware that we need to put out some more dates, so we will be doing that shortly. But things like dialing Q&A sessions, mapping workshops, introductory sessions to the chart of accounts, if you've got colleagues that might need to get up to speed. They all go out on our website too, so do check on there regularly, but we do have some more sessions coming up. And then we'll take any questions.
Yeah, so we've got two questions in the chat. One is from Selena. With the nominal for donations to charities, is there an income code you recommend for the monies